The institutional power of the British monarchy has always rested upon a foundation of carefully managed public perception, where a single photograph can carry the weight of a state decree, and a quiet meeting can ignite a global firestorm. For centuries, the royal court has used its immense cultural capital to dictate societal standards, elevate charitable endeavors, and craft an image of unified, benevolent leadership that stands completely detached from modern ideological battlegrounds. When the gates of the historic Palace of Holyroodhouse in Edinburgh were opened for a seemingly routine gathering, the world anticipated nothing more than another chapter in the Crown's long-standing dedication to British heritage, literacy, and academic advancement. The modern royal family operates under a microscopic level of scrutiny, where every wardrobe choice, every guest list, and every social media upload is analyzed by millions of observers seeking hidden messages, modern alignments, or subtle structural shifts within the institution. This delicate equilibrium was fundamentally disrupted when the official communication channels of the monarchy broadcast an image that instantly polarized the public, forcing a collision between ancient tradition and the fierce cultural wars of the 21st century. The visual evidence of this meeting was presented to the world on a quiet afternoon, but the digital resonance of that single post began to tear through the fabric of the royal family's carefully curated neutrality within a matter of minutes. As the modern landscape demands absolute perfection from public figures, the Crown now finds itself trapped in an escalating storm of public outrage, fierce loyalty, and deep disappointment that threatens to overshadow its broader philanthropic mission. To truly understand how a simple photograph taken within the walls of a royal sanctuary could provoke such visceral anger across the globe, one must examine the intricate web of symbolism, timing, and public expectation that defines the contemporary monarchy. If you want to stay informed on the deepest cultural shifts, internal royal dynamics, and the hidden stories that shape our global media landscape, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community of analytical viewers. The image in question featured Queen Camilla, the 78-year-old matriarch who has dedicated much of her public life to the promotion of literacy, standing side by side with one of the most successful yet deeply polarizing literary figures in modern history. Dressed in an elegant, structured all-blue outfit that mirrored the traditional tones of royal authority, the Queen stood with a poised smile alongside J.K. Rowling, the legendary 60-year-old creator of the global Harry Potter phenomenon. Rowling, matching the formal atmosphere of the Scottish palace, chose a sharp white blazer layered over a navy blue blouse and tailored trousers, presenting an image of two highly influential women united by a singular, noble cause. According to the official statements released alongside the photograph, the meeting was centered entirely on their shared passion for literature, their mutual love for the written word, and an unyielding commitment to expanding children's reading opportunities worldwide. The royal captions detailed how Her Majesty and the world-renowned author engaged in a deep analytical discussion regarding the absolute necessity of ensuring that young people from all walks of life have unrestricted access to books. They spoke at length about the vital, transformative role that early childhood literacy plays in opening doors for future generations, fostering imagination, and breaking down social barriers that trap young minds in cycles of intellectual deprivation. To the casual observer, the event was a resounding success for the Queen's Reading Room initiative, a highly celebrated charitable foundation that has consistently sought to elevate authors and preserve the sanctity of creative expression across the United Kingdom. Yet, beneath the polished surface of this royal press release lay a volatile cultural fuse that was lit the exact second the image appeared on global digital feeds, transforming a literacy campaign into a battleground. The core of the public's boiling fury did not stem from the literary topic itself, but rather from the highly sensitive timing of the publication and the deeply controversial reputation of the author chosen to share the Queen's global platform. The photograph was uploaded directly to the monarchy's main digital accounts during the height of the month of June, a period globally recognized and fiercely celebrated as Pride Month by the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities. For millions of individuals worldwide, this specific month represents an essential sanctuary for visibility, systemic advocacy, and the reinforcement of human rights for historically marginalized sexual and gender minorities. By intentionally projecting an image of the highest female representative of the British Crown standing in warm, celebratory solidarity with J.K. Rowling during this exact window, the royal family inadvertently sent a shockwave through their audience. Rowling has transitioned in the public consciousness from a beloved children's author into one of the most prominent, uncompromising, and highly vocal figures in the global gender-critical movement, a position her critics label as explicitly anti-trans. The immediate reaction from the global public was a torrent of condemnation, as thousands of dedicated followers, former royal admirers, and human rights advocates flooded the comment sections to voice their profound sense of betrayal. The contrast between the inclusive values traditionally promoted during the global June celebrations and the rigid biological definitions of sex championed by Rowling created an immediate ideological chasm. Critics argued with immense fervor that the Crown was using its incomparable institutional authority to legitimize and platform views that many believe actively endanger the safety, dignity, and legal recognition of transgender individuals. The language used by the public was unusually sharp for a royal forum, with longtime supporters stating that they were deeply disillusioned to see the Queen grant such an elite, prestigious stage to an author whose rhetoric has caused immense pain. For these observers, the choice of guest was not an innocent celebration of books, but a calculated ideological statement that signaled a cold indifference to the ongoing struggle for transgender equality and acceptance. Many users emphasized that the United Kingdom possesses an extraordinary abundance of admirable, highly accomplished literary figures who could have been spotlighted to champion children's literacy without alienating an entire community. The repetition of the phrase "trans rights" are human rights echoed across the digital landscape, turning the official royal page into a chaotic archive of modern social protest and cultural warfare. Yet, as the wave of condemnation grew more aggressive, an equally passionate faction of defenders emerged to shield both the Queen and the author, creating a fierce debate that perfectly mirrors the deep polarization of modern society. Supporters argued that Rowling is an independent intellectual who is entirely entitled to her deeply held convictions regarding biology, free speech, and the preservation of female-only spaces. They claimed that the aggressive attempt to silence or isolate her represents a dangerous double standard where large platforms are celebrated when they align with prevailing social trends, but are viciously attacked when they express a dissenting perspective. This opening clash has set the stage for an unprecedented confrontation between the traditional authority of the House of Windsor and the unstoppable momentum of modern cultural movements, a conflict that will only deepen as the hidden details of this royal alliance are brought to light. The widening ideological rift surrounding the palace meeting cannot be understood without examining the specific history of the literary creator's evolution from a universally praised storyteller into a defiant figurehead of the global gender-critical movement. For years, the author of the Harry Potter universe had maintained an almost mythical status in the publishing industry, celebrated for her rags-to-riches biography and her immense philanthropic contributions to global literacy, single-parent families, and medical research. However, the trajectory of her public reception shifted permanently in October of 2023, when she chose to directly confront the prevailing linguistic and social standards of modern gender activism. In a definitive and highly publicized social media post, she shared an image that carried the explicitly clear instruction to repeat after us. "Trans women are women," to which she appended a singular, uncompromising, and historic response: "No." This public declaration was not a momentary lapse in caution, but rather the opening salvo of a prolonged, deliberate campaign against what she characterizes as compelled speech and the dangerous erasure of biological reality. She openly declared to her millions of followers that she would willingly and happily serve a 2-year prison sentence if the alternative meant denying the fundamental importance, history, and objective truth of biological sex. This willingness to face criminal incarceration rather than yield to modern ideological expectations elevated the stakes of the cultural debate, transforming her into a martyr for free speech advocates and a highly dangerous adversary for the global transgender community. The sheer intensity of her conviction instantly created an environment of absolute polarization, making any future public association with her a high-stakes gamble for any public institution, let alone the British royal family. The ripples of this ideological warfare rapidly tore through the very entertainment empire that she had constructed over the previous 3 decades, creating an unprecedented public divide between the author and the young actors whose careers she had effectively launched. The primary cinematic stars of the multi-billion-dollar Harry Potter film franchise found themselves in an impossible position, caught between their professional gratitude to their creator and their deep personal commitment to progressive human rights. Figures like Daniel Radcliffe, who portrayed the titular boy wizard, and Emma Watson, who came to embody the intellectual heroine Hermione Granger, chose to take a definitive, public stand against the author's stated positions. Radcliffe partnered with prominent suicide prevention organizations for LGBTQ youth to issue formal statements affirming that transgender women are women, explicitly apologizing to fans whose relationship with the books had been tarnished by the author's public rhetoric. Watson used high-profile media appearances and award ceremonies to signal her unwavering solidarity with the transgender community, creating a profound and highly visible estrangement within the creative family that had once captivated the imagination of the entire planet. This internal rebellion within her own artistic universe did not cause the author to retreat. Instead, it prompted her to launch even more aggressive counter-offensives against what she viewed as widespread cultural cowardice and institutional betrayal. The conflict reached a critical boiling point when multiple prominent actors from the broader Wizarding World franchise, including individuals from the Fantastic Beasts spin-off films, signed an open letter advocating for expansive transgender protections and legal recognition. This occurred immediately after the United Kingdom Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling establishing that the legal terms woman and sex refer strictly and exclusively to a biological female and biological sex. The author reacted to this collective artistic protest with a blistering, meticulously crafted essay that shocked the entertainment industry due to its raw, unvarnished hostility toward her former colleagues. She explicitly described the actors, including prominent figures such as Eddie Redmayne, Papa Essiedu, and Katie Leung, as backstabbing colleagues who were entirely motivated by a deep-seated fear of social media cancellation rather than actual moral conviction. She argued that these young performers were abandoning the very biological realities that protect women and children simply to appease a volatile online mob that demands absolute ideological conformity. This escalating hostility ensured that the entire Harry Potter brand became permanently radioactive, with every subsequent corporate project, television reboot, or theatrical production forced to navigate the treacherous waters of her controversial legacy. The depth of this controversy was brought into sharp focus during the pre-production phases of the highly anticipated HBO television series reboot of the Harry Potter novels. Legendary actor John Lithgow, who was cast to portray the iconic role of Hogwarts headmaster Albus Dumbledore, publicly admitted that he had been heavily pressured by colleagues and industry insiders to stay completely away from the project due to the author's toxic public profile. Lithgow openly acknowledged that he disagreed with much of what the author had said, noting that her views had been twisted, doubled down upon, and maintained at an immense personal and professional cost to her own reputation. Ultimately, Lithgow decided to accept the role, arguing that the cultural value of the story and the opportunity to bring the classic literature to a new generation far outweighed the contemporary necessity to protest against the author's private political and social statements. This complex industry landscape illustrates that by the time Queen Camilla invited the author to the Palace of Holyroodhouse, the name J.K. Rowling was no longer just associated with childhood magic, but was instead an international symbol of intense social friction. The Queen's decision to feature her so prominently during Pride Month was seen by critics as a deliberate blind spot, a failure of basic cultural awareness that insulted the millions of citizens who view the author's work as actively harmful. The palace's official defense that the meeting was strictly non-political and entirely focused on the universal good of children's literacy was dismissed by detractors as a hollow, disingenuous shield used to hide a conservative royal alignment. Tension continues to mount as observers realize that the British monarchy, an institution built on the concept of representing all citizens equally, has now anchored itself to one of the most divisive figures of the modern era, raising critical questions about the true intent behind this royal gathering. The institutional significance of the meeting between Queen Camilla and J.K. Rowling extends far beyond the boundaries of a temporary digital media cycle, serving as a profound illustration of the changing nature of institutional power in an era defined by absolute ideological polarization. For the Queen, navigating intense public disapproval and managing complex public relations crises is not a novel experience, but rather the familiar terrain that has defined her entire historical journey within the House of Windsor. Born Camilla Rosemary Shand, her decades-long relationship with the King was once the source of unparalleled media hostility, making her one of the most intensely scrutinized and criticized women in modern British history. Through years of quiet persistence, disciplined public service, and a steadfast refusal to engage with media provocation, she systematically rebuilt her public standing, transforming in the eyes of the nation from a highly controversial figure into the respected queen consort, and ultimately the matriarch of the monarchy. A central pillar of this remarkable institutional rehabilitation has been her absolute dedication to classical, non-controversial philanthropic causes, most notably the advancement of adult literacy and the preservation of literature through the establishment of her celebrated initiative, the Queen's Reading Room. This global foundation was specifically designed to celebrate the timeless, unifying power of storytelling, providing a neutral space where readers could connect with authors completely detached from contemporary social or ideological battlegrounds. By inviting the creator of the Harry Potter universe into this royal sanctuary, the Queen undoubtedly sought to honor one of the most prolific and historically significant literary achievements in British history. Yet the resulting fallout demonstrates that in the modern era, no charitable endeavor can remain completely immune to the fierce cultural currents of the internet. The palace's traditional strategy of remaining completely silent in the face of public controversy aligns perfectly with historical precedent. Yet, this silence has allowed both critics and defenders to project their own intense anxieties onto the monarchy, transforming a literacy campaign into a high-stakes referendum on contemporary social values. To fully comprehend the gravity of this royal alliance, one must also analyze the unique and equally complex trajectory of Joanne Rowling, whose rise from a struggling single mother living on state benefits in Edinburgh to a global literary billionaire remains one of the most extraordinary stories in modern publishing history. Her creative output did not merely entertain a generation of children, it fundamentally reshaped global youth culture, altered international literacy rates, and redefined the economic landscape of the entertainment industry through books, films, theatrical productions, and massive theme park franchises. For decades, her extensive philanthropic work, including the creation of the international charity Lumos, which works tirelessly to end the institutionalization of vulnerable children worldwide, positioned her as a progressive champion of human rights and social welfare. This deep-seated commitment to children's well-being and the transformative power of literature is the precise historical and intellectual ground where her public path naturally crossed with that of Queen Camilla. However, her deliberate transition into the vanguard of the global gender-critical movement has completely recontextualized her cultural legacy, ensuring that her immense influence is now viewed through an incredibly fractured lens. For her massive network of supporters, her willingness to risk her unparalleled global status, her professional relationships, and her personal safety to defend biological definitions of womanhood is celebrated as an act of supreme moral courage and intellectual integrity. Conversely, for her millions of detractors, her continuous and uncompromising public pronouncements represent a harmful and regressive use of immense privilege that actively undermines the hard-won social acceptance and legal protections of an already vulnerable transgender minority group. This irreconcilable division ensures that any event featuring her presence automatically ceases to be a simple celebration of books and instead becomes a volatile symbol of modern identity politics. This specific royal controversy exposes a profound systemic challenge facing the contemporary British monarchy as it attempts to maintain its relevance, moral authority, and unifying status in a hyper-connected digital society that demands absolute transparency and ethical alignment. Historically, the Crown has survived structural upheavals by adhering to a strict doctrine of political neutrality, acting as a stabilizing anchor that transcends the temporary ideological and social conflicts of the day. This traditional strategy of quiet ambiguity, famously summarized by the historic royal maxim to never complain and never explain, allowed successive monarchs to remain a symbol of unity for citizens of all political persuasions and social backgrounds. However, the rise of modern digital communication, social media algorithms, and the absolute polarization of the cultural landscape have rendered this historical neutrality increasingly difficult, if not entirely impossible, to maintain. In the contemporary media environment, a refusal to take a visible side is often interpreted by competing factions as a silent, calculated endorsement of the opposition, transforming even the most innocent or traditional charitable gestures into weaponized narrative tools. The image of the Queen standing in warm solidarity with an author viewed by the LGBTQ+ community as a prominent adversary sent an immediate, damaging signal of institutional exclusion to millions of subjects who look to the Crown for validation and protection. For these individuals, the timing of the publication during a globally recognized month of minority visibility made the gesture feel like a deliberate dismissal of their ongoing struggle for human dignity and social equality. Conversely, for advocates of free speech, academic freedom, and traditional definitions of sex, the photograph is celebrated as a heroic refusal by the monarchy to bow to the intense pressures of modern cancellation culture, transforming the Queen into an unwitting symbol of traditional resilience against ideological conformity. Ultimately, the enduring significance of the meeting between Queen Camilla and J.K. Rowling extends far beyond the boundaries of a temporary internet scandal, serving as a powerful and historic case study in the inevitable collision between ancient tradition and modern social evolution. The event illustrates the complete breakdown of the traditional boundaries that once separated charitable public service from contentious social debate, proving that in the current media climate, every public action, association, and publication carries an inescapable ideological weight. As the House of Windsor navigates the complexities of the 21st century without the long-standing stabilizing presence of its past monarchs, it must grapple with a global audience that no longer views the royal family through a lens of unquestioning deference, but rather demands active alignment with rapidly evolving ethical and social standards. The fierce passions aroused by this single photograph demonstrate that the Crown no longer commands a monopoly over its own public narrative, as the digital public now possesses the power to redefine a royal literacy campaign into a battleground for human rights and freedom of expression. Whether this incident will be remembered as a temporary tremor in the long history of the modern monarchy or as a defining moment that signaled a growing ideological disconnect between the Crown and to progressive global values remains an open question for future historians. What is symbols and narratives cannot be isolated from the real-world struggles of the people they govern, leaving an institution built on timeless permanence to find its delicate footing in a shifting landscape of continuous, unpredictable social change. The story of this royal photograph is the story of our modern world, where the magic of